There's a particular kind of financial delusion that's become epidemic in modern America, and it's destroying people's futures without them even realizing it. You see it everywhere. The person driving a $70,000 SUV who can't afford a $500 emergency. The family living in a beautiful house who's one layoff away from foreclosure. The professional making six figures who has nothing saved for retirement. They look successful, they feel successful. They're living what appears to be a comfortable, even affluent lifestyle. But underneath the surface, underneath all the expensive purchases and the Instagram-worthy experiences, there's nothing. No savings, no investments, no real wealth. Just a paycheck-to-paycheck existence dressed up in luxury goods. And the truly insidious part is that they don't even know they're poor. They feel rich because they're spending like rich people. But spending like you're rich and actually being rich are two completely different things. Warren Buffett has lived in the same house in Omaha, Nebraska since 1958. He bought it for $31,500. Today, he's worth over $100 billion, and he still lives in that same house. It's a nice house, don't get me wrong, but it's not a mansion, it's not a compound. It's just a regular, comfortable house in a regular neighborhood. And people look at this and they think it's quirky or eccentric or some kind of performance, but it's not. It's a fundamental difference in understanding what wealth actually is. Buffett understands that wealth is not what you spend. Wealth is what you keep. Wealth is what you own. Wealth is assets that generate income and appreciate over time. And every dollar you spend on consumption, on things that depreciate or disappear, is a dollar that can never become wealth. That can never compound. That can never work for you while you sleep. Most people have this completely backwards. They think that wealth is demonstrated through spending. You're successful when you can afford the nice car, the big house, the expensive vacations, the designer clothes. And there's a reason people think this way. Because that's what you can see. You can see someone's car. You can see their house. You can see their clothes. What you can't see is their bank account. You can't see their investment portfolio. You can't see their debt. You can't see that the person in the BMW is drowning in car payments and credit card debt. You can't see that the person in the $1 million house has a $900,000 mortgage and no equity. You can't see that the person taking luxury vacations is financing them and going deeper into debt every year. All you see is the consumption. And because that's all you see, that's what you think success looks like. And here's where the trap really springs shut. Once you start spending to signal success, you're trapped in a cycle that's almost impossible to escape. Because your lifestyle, your consumption, it adjusts upward really easily, but it almost never adjusts downward. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill or lifestyle inflation, but it's really just human nature. You get a raise, you upgrade your apartment. You get a promotion, you buy a nicer car. You have a good year, you start shopping at more expensive stores, and each upgrade feels justified. You earned it. You worked hard, you deserve it, and maybe that's all true. But what you don't realize is that you're trading your future for your present. Every dollar you spend upgrading your lifestyle is a dollar that's not being invested, a dollar that's not compounding, a dollar that's not building real wealth. And over time, over decades, those decisions compound into two completely different financial lives. Let me show you exactly how this works with some real numbers, because the math is what makes this so devastating. Imagine someone who starts making $80,000 a year at age 30. And let's say every time they get a raise, every time their income goes up, they increase their spending to match. So at 30, they're making $80,000 and spending $75,000. At 35, they're making $100,000 and spending $95,000. At 40, they're making $120,000 and spending $115,000. By the time they're 50, they're making $150,000 and spending $145,000. They look successful at every stage. They're living a lifestyle that matches their income, but here's what's happening to their net worth. After 20 years, after going from $80,000 to $150,000 in income, they might have $150,000 saved if they're lucky. Maybe less if they've been financing cars and taking expensive vacations and upgrading their house. That's it. 20 years of solid income. And they have about 1 year's worth of expenses saved. Now take someone who starts in the exact same position, 80,000 at age 30. But they make a different choice. They decide that they're going to live on 60,000 a year regardless of what they earn. At 30, they're making 80,000, spending 60,000, investing 20,000. At 35, they're making 100,000, still spending 60,000, now investing 40,000. At 40, they're making 120,000, still spending 60,000, investing 60,000. At 50, they're making 150,000, still spending 60,000, investing 90,000 a year. Same income trajectory, same raises, same promotions, but completely different spending behavior. And here's what happens to their wealth. After 20 years, assuming 7% returns, they have over $1.2 million. Not from making more money, from spending less and investing the difference. That's the power of avoiding the spending trap. That's what happens when you understand that wealth is what you keep, not what you spend. Warren Buffett talks about opportunity cost constantly. Every decision you make is not just about what you're getting. It's about what you're giving up. When you buy a $70,000 car instead of a $35,000 car, you're not just spending an extra $35,000. You're giving up what that $35,000 could have become. If you invested that $35,000 and it grew at 7% for 30 years, that's $266,000. You didn't buy a nicer car. You traded $250,000 of future wealth for a few years of driving something flashier, and most people never think about it this way. They think about the monthly payment. Can I afford $700 a month? Sure, but they don't think about what $700 a month invested over 30 years becomes. That's $325,000. The car is worth maybe $5,000 at the end. The investments are worth $325,000. Those are the actual numbers. That's the actual trade you're making, and it's not just cars. It's everything. The bigger house, the nicer furniture, the expensive restaurants, the designer clothes. All of these things feel like they're just normal consumption. Just living your life. Just enjoying the money you earn. But every single one is a trade between present consumption and future wealth, and most people are making these trades unconsciously. They're not weighing the options, they're not doing the math. They're just spending whatever they can afford in the moment, and then wondering years later why they're not wealthy despite making good money their whole lives. Here's what makes this particularly insidious. The people who fall into the spending trap often feel rich, they feel successful. They're living in nice houses, driving nice cars, wearing nice clothes. They go to nice restaurants. They take nice vacations. By every external measure, they appear to be doing well. And internally, they feel like they're doing well. They think, I'm making 6 figures, I'm living a good life, I must be financially successful. But they're not measuring the right thing. They're measuring lifestyle, not wealth. And lifestyle can evaporate in an instant. You lose your job, you can't maintain the lifestyle. You have a health crisis, the lifestyle goes away. You hit retirement, and suddenly you realize the lifestyle was built on income that's no longer coming in. And there's nothing underneath. No assets, no investments, no wealth. Just a pile of consumption that's already been consumed. Let me tell you what actual wealth looks like, because I think this is where most people's mental model is completely wrong. Wealth is waking up and knowing that if you never earned another dollar, you'd be fine for years. Maybe for decades. Maybe forever. Wealth is having assets that generate income independent of your labor. Wealth is having options, the option to retire early, the option to take a lower-paying job you'd enjoy more, the option to take a year off, the option to help your kids, the option to weather any crisis without panic. That's wealth. And you can't get there through consumption. You can only get there through saving and investing, through keeping more than you spend, through building assets instead of buying liabilities. And here's the paradox that Buffett understood early. The less you spend, the richer you actually become, not just in net worth, but in real quality of life. Because once you escape the spending trap, once you stop needing to maintain an expensive lifestyle, you're free. You're not worried about losing your job because you have years of expenses saved. You're not stressed about the economy because you're not leveraged. You're not keeping up with anyone because you stopped playing that game. And the peace of mind, the security, the freedom, that's worth more than any luxury good you could buy. That's the real wealth that most people chasing luxury never experience. Now, some people hear this and they think I'm saying you should never spend money on anything, that you should live like a monk and hoard every dollar. And that's not the point at all. The point is being intentional, being conscious, understanding what you're actually trading when you spend. If you want to spend money on something that genuinely improves your life, that brings you real joy or real utility, that's fine. That's what money is for. But the spending has to be conscious and deliberate, not automatic, not keeping up with others, not signaling success, not filling some void. Most of the spending that gets people trapped is not spending on things they truly value. It's spending on things they think they're supposed to value. Things that society or advertising or their peer group has told them successful people buy, Warren Buffett tells. A story about when he was young and successful people told him he needed to buy a bigger house, wear expensive suits, drive a luxury car. Because that's what successful business people did. And he looked at the math and realized that none of those things would make him happier or more successful. They just cost money. Money that couldn't compound, so he didn't do it. He kept living below his means. And the people who gave him that advice, many of them made similar money to what he made early in his career. But they spent it, and he invested it. And 50 years later, the difference in outcomes is measured in billions of dollars. Not because Buffett was smarter or luckier, because he understood the difference between spending and wealth. Here's a simple test to know if you're in the spending trap. Could you maintain your current lifestyle for 6 months with no income? A year? If the answer is no, you're in the trap. You're dependent on continuous income to maintain your consumption. And that's not wealth. That's a high-income lifestyle built on a foundation of nothing. And the scary part is how common this is. Studies show that something like 60% of Americans couldn't cover a $1,000 emergency without going into debt. 60%. That includes people making $50,000, making $100,000, making more. Income level doesn't protect you from the spending trap. Plenty of people making $200,000 a year are just as trapped as people making $50,000. They just have more expensive traps. And this is where we need to talk about debt, because debt is often the mechanism that allows people to spring the trap on themselves. Credit cards, car loans, mortgages that are too large, home equity lines of credit, these tools let you spend money you don't have. They let you live a lifestyle your income can't actually support. And people rationalize it. It's just a small car payment. Everyone has a mortgage. Credit cards are fine as long as you pay them off. But here's the reality. Every dollar you owe is a dollar working against you instead of for you. It's negative compounding. The money you pay in interest is money that can never build wealth. And the more debt you have, the more trapped you are. Because now you're not just dependent on income to maintain your lifestyle, you're dependent on income to service your debt. Miss a payment and everything can collapse? Warren Buffett has said that he's seen more people fail because of liquor and leverage than any other reason. The leverage part is debt. And what he means is that debt amplifies everything. It amplifies gains if things go well, but it amplifies losses if things go wrong. And life has a way of going wrong sometimes. You lose your job. You have a health issue. The economy crashes. And if you're leveraged, if you're in debt, those problems can become catastrophic really fast. But if you have no debt, if you have savings, those same problems are manageable. Uncomfortable maybe, but manageable. That's the difference between financial fragility and financial resilience. And you can't have resilience while you're trapped in consumption and debt. So how do you escape? How do you get out of the spending trap if you're in it, or avoid it if you're not? First, you need a shift in identity. You need to stop thinking of yourself as a consumer and start thinking of yourself as an investor. You're not someone who earns money to spend money. You're someone who earns money to build wealth. That mental shift changes everything. When you see yourself as an investor, spending becomes something you do carefully and strategically, not automatically. You start asking, is this purchase building wealth or consuming it? And that question alone will change most of your spending behavior. Second, you need to reverse engineer your spending. Most people spend whatever's left after they've paid their bills. That's backward. You should pay yourself first. Decide what percentage of your income you're going to save and invest. Take that off the top and then live on what's left. If you're currently saving 5%, try 10%. If you're saving 10%, try 20%. And don't increase your spending when your income goes up. Let that gap grow. Let the amount you're investing grow. That's how you build wealth fast. Third, you need to ruthlessly cut spending that doesn't actually improve your life. And this requires honesty. Most people's spending is full of things that don't matter. Subscriptions they don't use. Clothes they don't wear. Restaurants that are fine but not special. Cars that are nicer than they need. Houses that are bigger than they need. Status symbols that impress nobody who matters. Cut all of it. Keep only the spending that genuinely makes your life better. And invest the difference. And fourth, you need to change your reference point. Stop comparing yourself to what other people appear to have, because what they appear to have is usually financed and fragile. Compare yourself to your own goals. How much wealth do you want to have in 10 years? 20 years? What do you need to save and invest to get there? Focus on that, not on keeping up with the neighbors or looking successful. Real success is having enough wealth that you don't need to work, that you have options, that you're free. And that doesn't look like anything from the outside. That's internal. That's numbers on a balance sheet that nobody sees but you, Warren. Buffett is worth $100 billion and most people wouldn't recognize him on the street. He doesn't look wealthy. He doesn't act wealthy. He just is wealthy. Because he spent his life building assets instead of consuming. And the freedom that gave him the ability to spend his time exactly how he wants. Doing what he loves, never worrying about money. That's what real wealth looks like. Not the car, not the house, not the clothes, the freedom, the options, the security. That's what you're giving up when you fall into the spending trap. You're trading real wealth for the appearance of wealth, and that's a trade you'll regret if you let it play out over a lifetime. The good news is you can change it starting today. Starting with the next dollar you earn, you can choose to keep it instead of spend it. You can choose to invest it instead of consume it. And over time, those choices compound into real wealth, into real freedom, into the kind of financial life that most people spending to look rich will never experience.